Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said in the last segment, I'm happy to see Mitt Romney's come out with a minimum wage increase bill. I want to see what the numbers are. Devil always in the details. But right from the beginning, I was on the Fight for 15 bandwagon. And not just for the $15 an hour minimum wage increase, but also for the second part that always seems to get left out conveniently. And I don't know why, but the rallying call was always 15 in a union. The idea that you get to that minimum of a 15, but then we go beyond that, that we actually earn the wages that our labor earn us. If we're creating a massive amount of wealth, we should want some of it. And we deserve some of it. So when I see people doing things that are going to make it easier for folks to organize, encourage people to organize, we got to get them here on the program. And we had a listener point out that there's a new app out there that is going to help do some of that. It's called Unit, and I've got the founder of Unit on the line here. His name is Jamie Earl White. Jamie, thanks for taking time for us.
Hi there, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what is Unit? And again, the website is unitworkers.com if folks want to take a look at it. But what is Unit?
Unit fundamentally is a platform that helps you organize your workplace. So it's made for worker organizers. It's a combination of advice, so that's in articles and real human advisors, and software tools that make organizing using best practices easier, safer in the digital age, especially for, remote workplaces during COVID or workplaces that are using tech every day anyway.
So you're creating a space for people to come and find information and maybe find each other. Explain how it works.
When we interviewed a lot of early stage worker organizers that were just getting started, one of the biggest hesitations was, do my coworkers feel the same way? How do I find out? What do people care about? And so the way we designed it right now is that you sign up. It walks you through some union eligibility questions, right? Because if you're a supervisor and you sign up, you're not going to be able to use the NLRB law to help you out there. After that questionnaire, though, you can invite your coworkers to take a survey and also gauge their interest in forming a union. And 90% of people that log on aren't going to know what a union is. That's just where we live in today in the United States. And so they can go and find more information. We have a lot of links to resources, and we're building a knowledge base of articles just around unionizing. What are unions and what are the laws surrounding them in the U.S.?
Yeah, I know, and that's an incredibly important function because, as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm realizing the generation behind me, they know nothing. My grandparents' generation, they were heavily unionized. In fact, 35% of the workforce in 1965 was unionized. So you literally couldn't cross the street without bumping into a union member. We're in a moment right now where in the private sector, you're just above 6%. So the chances of coming across somebody are getting slimmer and slimmer. And especially as there's more effort put in to telling us that unions are somehow bad and things that we needed in the old days. And yet you look at the inequality that we've got now, you've got the poverty we have now. I say we need unions more than ever.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's crazy. You said some of the stats, right? 6% private unionized, 60% of people when surveyed support unions. 90% of those people have no idea what a union is, right? Or how it works or how to form one or why they might want one in their workplace. And so I think there's this big gap where we actually do have a lot of people that maybe ideologically think well of the idea, but practically don't know how to translate that into organizing in their own workplace.
So I go to unitworkers.com. I put in my name. I go through my occupation. I go through all this stuff to answer the questions because I went through it and I pretended to be a supervisor and it said, no, you can't go here. Go back. So if I get to the end of this, where then do I go? I get all this information. If my other coworkers go in, do we get into a community? Is there a community that's built? Do we contact each other? How does it work from that next phase?
Yeah, so within the app, you and your coworkers that are supportive can sign election petition cards, auth cards right in the app, right? So first of all, we get some of that documentation handled. That's great to just start from the very start of the organizing process. But also then the app starts to introduce supporters, right? So that instead of having this kind of anonymous survey of, oh, hey, I have a few workplace organizers that are supportive here, we say, hey, here's you need to work together with these people, right? So we start scheduling meetings for them and start introducing them to each other in this union-friendly environment. The next step, right, if they're seeing some support in the workplace and getting some traction with the election petition cards, is we put them in touch with a union organizer, right? So we hire and employ full-time labor advisors that are experienced union organizers, and their whole goal is to help this workplace get to a place where it can file an election petition and win a union election within the workplace.
So this sounds fantastic, and I hope people will take a look at it. Again, unitworkers.com is the website. We'll get links out on our social media to make sure people have an opportunity to take a look at this. How did you come up with this? And do you have an organizing background?
Yeah, a tiny one. So I won't claim to be an expert here. We definitely lean on a bunch of advisors for the meat of organizing best practices, and a lot of that's been built over the years by the labor movement. Now I would never be able to take credit for any of that, right? But the way I got started in the labor movement was I moved from Texas to Boston for school, went to MIT, studied to be an engineer, always fascinated with technology. And at MIT, took some classes on economics, and I'd already gotten the feeling, just moving from a rural Texas town to Boston, this feeling of the effect that income inequality had on these different living environments. And so that got matched up to some theory and economics studying in university, but I didn't really get to see the labor movement in practice or organizing in practice until Occupy hit. So I was in grad school when Occupy hit. I was still in Boston, and the Occupy Boston movement was helping out with the SEIU, organizing janitors at MIT and Harvard in Boston. And I lived for 4 years in a dorm, worked with and helped one of the janitors that worked in our dorm, still friends with them to this day. And so that really resonated with me, right? These people deserve way better than the institution was giving them. And so we organized students to help volunteer with these protests that were going on at the time. And I believe both university janitorial staffs had some wins out of that. But I was mainly focused on the MIT one, and that really instilled, the practical idea of the wins that you can have by organizing for worker power, right? These weren't folks that there was no app or anything like that, right? It was horribly inefficient in a lot of ways, right? We were phone banking, we were knocking on doors and things like that. But when you got there and had this protest and saw, the effect that it had on the community, these institutions had no choice but to pay these folks what they deserved. And but a bit after that, I kept looking into this, and some articles were released by this think tank called the Century Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with those folks. Yeah. They published a couple of articles on virtual labor organizing. And it was essentially aimed at how software tools could help organizers, be more effective, cover more ground. They drew analogies to political organizing, where technology has been used to great effect, right? And we took that as kind of a blueprint, and in 2019 got started working with worker organizers and some labor advisors on how do we turn this into a tool that can help an everyday person that Google searches, I want to form a union in my workplace.
No, it sounds like a great idea, and it answers one of the questions for me of how do you get into some of these facilities. I look at these Amazon campuses, and I look at how massive and sprawling these places are, and they're all private property. There are no union organizers allowed to go hand out cards or anything like that. So they've insulated themselves. So this begins to answer that question of how do you get access to those people who, as you pointed out, 60% of them say that they would join a union tomorrow if they were given the opportunity. You're now giving them the opportunity. So in this, as I understand this unit program to work, you could get workers from all over the place, throwing their names in their place of employment in, and you're just coupling people up together. This sounds fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's been a blast to work on. It's still very early, right? We're not disclosing any numbers, but we have had cards accepted by the NLRB, so we know that the legal process and the paperwork that we're automatically generating, it does work and gets people to an election. Um, but at the end of the day, right, we don't know yet. Rather, this will be able to scale to something that really works. And so we're always looking for advice and good ideas and feedback from the movement on that,
Right.
and ways to make this work at a national scale.
I mean, back in the old days, if you wanted to get into a place like, um, you know, like an Amazon place, you had to get people to get hired in there to go and try and organize from within. But back, I think in 2004, 2007, they made salting illegal. That you
Yep.
could be fired for salting. So now, how do you get people in there to try and organize? This sounds like a good first step. The question that I keep coming back to though is privacy concerns, because a lot of people are going to be kind of freaked out, going, oh, because we're a skittish society right now. If you haven't figured it out, so many people are like, I'm just happy to have a job. I don't want to rock the boat. That kind of stuff. How do you deal with privacy concerns when you have a bunch of people from one place signing up? Who's to say that one of the guys isn't a supervisor just to spy on the people signing up?
Yeah, no, and we see this and we hear it because we had a recent workplace, for example, that their employer spent probably around $15,000 on an anti-union firm for a tiny unit, 15 people roughly, and then split them up into shifts to take these captive audience meetings, using COVID as an excuse for telling some of them to stay at home, and just seeing the fear that instilled in these folks was really a tragedy. But yeah, how do we ensure the privacy and security of people that use the Unit app? It's extremely important to us. The main way that we do that is by only showing information to people that have proved that they're supportive within the app. And so generally that's signing an auth card and inviting people, right? And that starts to create, even in an organic organizing environment, that starts to create the trust that brings together the organizing committee. And so through some workplace mapping tools where you're listing out your coworkers, right, and inviting them to the app, we can pinpoint who's most active and who's most involved. Now, there's always the chance, right, as in any organizing drive, that somebody comes in, takes a screenshot, prints it out, shows it to the boss, right? There's nothing anyone's ever going to be able to do about that. But by protecting all this information behind logins, we can see who's accessing it. So at least if a boss is going in there, signing up as a worker and spying on this, we have a good log of all of that we can take to the NLRB and say, look, this is spying, very clear evidence.
Yeah, ultimately, what we do need, and while I love the idea of the app, and I think this is a great, as you've said, beginning and first step, we need major labor law reform in this country to go back to the original intent of the National Labor Relations Act that give people the right to join and form unions without the kind of harassment and intimidation that we're seeing going on in Alabama right now with Amazon. It's disgraceful that in this country, in the 21st century, we're allowing 19th century tactics to go on right in front of our faces, and we're incapable of stopping it. And this is why, again, I'm hoping the Biden administration moves on the PRO Act, or something maybe hopefully even stronger, so that we can use tools like yours to bring people around to organize.
Our whole team, big supporter of the PRO Act. So I'm right behind you.
So the movement as a whole, I mean, they've got to be supportive of this. And it's something that, to be honest, and I'm not degrading what you've done, something that I've been asking for about a decade now. Saying, how come we can't put this on this little thingy we carry around in our pocket all the place?
Yeah.
I mean, good on you for doing it, but what the hell took so long?
I would say there's two things. So first of all, right, the labor movement as a whole, and we've interviewed a lot of people trying to get all the ideas that go into this and figure out which ideas are bad, right, and are going to lead down a path we don't want. We've found the movement to be cautiously optimistic, right? They want to see new tools, but they're also, just tech isn't the answer. At the end of the day, worker power is about the relationship between workers, right? No app is going to replace that. And so, the question we're trying to answer is, can you catalyze those relationships with the software? And so I would say cautious optimism. And then why hasn't it happened sooner? I think one of the things that we're experimenting with here, right, is actually a new economics of labor unionizing. So we are not a union. We are essentially an employee side labor advisor, right? So, you have the same class of things that are like union busters that a company hires, right? We're that for workers.
You're the anti-buster.
We're the anti-buster, and as such, that allows us to stay pretty independent. And so, to be honest, we don't know yet how we're going to make this sustainable in a way where we can, keep paying labor advisors, et cetera. Because I don't think, for example, I don't think donations are going to cut it here. But some ways we're thinking about that, and I think why this hasn't happened earlier is because we're really thinking about it as an independent entity, helping these folks get to the point where they're voting for certification, that we can then introduce them to affiliate or help them federate, for example. But either way, get them plugged into the larger labor network and use that as a way to keep funding the operation, either through national unions, federations, or through professional services that folks need, like union side lawyers, et cetera, right? And so that's one of the, kind of background inventions here is how do you keep it up, and how do you make it where it can spread all over the U.S. And that's something we're thinking a lot about. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it hasn't been done, right, is that there hasn't been a good strategy for how to keep it sustainable. Because,
I'm happy to see that it's done, because I keep telling people in my union that the future is all on this little thing we carry around with us, because I know my kids, you can't get their heads up from it. So that's how they look. My kids are in 3 different rooms in the same house, and they're texting each other. This is the future. And I know, as the labor movement gets a bad rap for being old, male, and stale. But looking at this as part of the future is probably not a bad thing. Again, the app is called Unit. You can check out their website at unitworkers.com. We'll get links out on how you can sign up for that and take advantage of it. Last question I've got for you on this. In looking at this, I guess give me the 30-second elevator pitch on why you think this is important.
I think this is important because, to be honest, I think you already summed it up. I think there's an entire new generation of workers who either work using technology or socialize using technology that need tools to plug into that to organize their coworkers. And that's a similar generation to one that doesn't know what a labor union is today, right? So if you can mate that education and those tools for organizing, I think you have a winning solution for early organizing in the United States. We can really form a lot of unions very quickly in workplaces that don't have them.
It's good stuff. Again, unitworkers.com, the website. We'll get links out. Jamie, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. I'd love to have you back down the road as this grows and hopefully changes the world.
Would love to be on and update you, Rick. Thanks.
Good stuff. Appreciate it, Jamie. Earl White. Again, the website, unitworkers.com. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.